Okay, Pam Lafredo here, work at Leapin Lizards here, and I'm very happy to have Kathleen Marden and Stanton Friedman joining us tonight. Preceding the UFO conference coming up this weekend, Experience or Speak 3. And I'll introduce Stanton first, and he can tell you a little something.
We're going to have a couple of days of lectures on Saturday and Sunday. There will be hundreds of people at the hotel here in town.
Clarion Hotel.
Clarion Hotel. There's a fee for the lectures, but there will be speakers. They will, most of them, be signing their books. And I'm sort of the exception. I'm not an experiencer. And my talk, the final talk, next to the final talk on Sunday, will be press coverage of UFOs and exercise in misrepresentation and incompetence. Well, there's far more than enough data to establish any rational person who looks at the data that some, underlined 18 times, some UFOs are intelligently controlled extraterrestrial spacecraft. Anybody who says they're not hasn't looked at that data. And I've given over 700 lectures in all 50 states, 10 provinces, and 18 other countries, and find that fewer than 2% of the people who've read any of the large-scale scientific studies. I ask at the end of my lectures how many people believe they've seen a flying saucer. I prefer the term flying saucer because all flying saucers are UFOs, not all UFOs are flying saucers. All great-grandfathers are men, not all men are great-grandfathers. You know. I ask at the end of my lecture, typically 10% of the people there reluctantly raise their hands, and I point and count. And typically, much to everybody's surprise, 10%, that's a lot of people. And the hands on this side of the room go up a lot more rapidly than over here, because everybody thought each one thought he was the only one. But then I ask, how many of you reported what you saw? 90% of the hands go down. And the reason, when I ask, is they think I was some kind of a nut. Well, all the opinion polls show there are more believers than non-believers, and the greater the education, the more likely to believe. The problem is most people think most other people don't accept the reality. And so there's a big misinformation problem here. And the nasty, noisy negativists, which is the term I use when I'm being polite, refuse to look at the evidence, refuse to look at the evidence of a cover-up. I'll be showing blacked out documents, and if you can tell me what's underneath the blackout, good for you, but I haven't been able to get anybody else to. Or whited out. National security agencies. Everybody's heard of Mr. Snowden's agency? Yes. NSA means no such agency, you know, never says anything, etc. Freedom of Information Act suit brought forth 156 top secret umbrella UFO documents from the NSA. Well, sort of brought forth. You can read one sentence per page. Everything else is whited out. And I have dozens of pages of almost completely blacked out CIA UFO documents. For people who say the government can't cover things up, I say, okay, tell me what's under the whiteout and tell me what's under the blackout. They can't, of course. I worked under security for 14 years, so I'm in a better position than most to say secrets can be kept. I've been to 20 archives, lots of stuff you can't see. We're dealing with a big subject. Also, an important aspect is that we have the nasty, noisy negativists saying you can't get here from there. So I even talk about this subject. That's nonsense, you know. I worked on fission nuclear rockets, fusion nuclear rockets, nuclear power plants for space. You can get here from there if you want to spend the money. We have learned, within my lifetime certainly, that the major source of energy in the entire universe is nuclear fusion. That's what goes on in the sun and all the other stars. I worked in a study of fusion propulsion in 1962, for goodness sakes. I was a wee broth of a lad, you understand. What I'm getting at is we have joined the club in our galactic neighborhood of those who know that if you want to, you can go. In other words, if you use fusion, you can get to the stars. if you want to spend the dough. And I'm not saying we should do that, that's a different question. But we've only had, for example, you've got the SETI people. You've heard of SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. No, silly effort to investigate. That's what I call it. They're assuming nobody out there is using a technology beyond what we know. We've only had long-distance radio since 1901. That's the best they can do? The planet's over 4 billion years old. The universe is 13. So to suggest that we're at the front edge of advanced technology is absurd. I used a slide rule when I started work in industry. No, I don't use one anymore because we have better ways of doing things. And so flying saucers bring out the worst in the noisy negativists. They refuse to look at the evidence and then tell you there is no evidence. My University of Chicago classmate, Carl Sagan, we were in the same classes for 3 years, said there are interesting sightings that aren't reliable. There are reliable sightings that aren't interesting. But there are no interesting and reliable sightings. Now, he gives no source, no evidence, no reference. The fact is, the largest study ever done for the United States government shows exactly the opposite. The higher the quality of the sighting, the reliability, the more likely to be unexplainable. So you can look around, you can find false claims, lies. Let me give you another one. Secretary of the Air Force. What higher authority can we find? When the biggest study was done for the United States Air Force, Project Blue Book, Special Report 14, way back in 1955, they didn't distribute the report, they distributed a press release. And I'll be talking about this in my lecture on Sunday. In it he says, on the basis of this study, we believe that no objects such as those popularly described as flying saucers have overflown the United States. Even the unknown 3% could have been identified as conventional phenomena or illusions if more complete observational data had been available. Sounds very straightforward. The only trouble is, if you look at the study, the unknowns are 21.5%. That's not 3 rounded off. They found the better the quality of the sighting, the more likely to be unexplainable. They looked at the characteristics of 3,201 sightings. They found that the probability that the unknowns, the only ones we're interested in, are just missed knowns, is less than 1%. And there's a separate category, insufficient information. So he was lying through his teeth. So I've talked more than I should have, but I want to give you an idea that there's an enormous amount of information that you won't hear about from the noisy negativists. That's their loss, it's our loss too, because it's distracting to have smart people say stupid things. We have our book here? Yeah. Yes. Here's a book, Science Was Wrong, by Kathleen and myself. 14 chapters. Each of them stimulated by some smart guy saying something stupid. Men will never fly in a vehicle. That was said by a great astronomer 2 months before the Wright brothers' first flight. English astronomer Royal in 1956, space travel is utter bilge, year before Sputnik. And there are a whole long list of these things, which people said were impossible. What they meant was they didn't know how to do it, so therefore nobody could do it. My mantra is technological progress comes from doing things differently in an unpredictable way. The future is not an extrapolation of the past. So I take a strong stand as a nuclear physicist who's been studying the phenomena since 1958, when I was a wee relative of that, of course. But, and it's fortunate that we have people like Kathleen, who is in the social sciences, looking at that side of things. And there's much more to be said for the reality of flying saucers than just lights in the sky. There are multiple witness radar visual sightings. There are sightings by pilots. There are physical trace cases. All kinds of good stuff out there. You'll never hear about it from the debunkers. Now, Kathleen can tell you about UFO abductions. And some people get all upset when I mention that word. As you will find out at this conference, there have been a lot of them. Kathleen?
UFO abductions are real? there is scientific evidence that UFO abductions are real. I'm the Mutual UFO Network's International Director of Abduction Research. I approach abduction research from the point of view of a social scientist, as Stan stated. I look for evidence, and I also do scientific studies in order to determine commonalities, if there are commonalities, among abduction experiencers. In the year 2012, Denise Stoner and I conducted a year-long study. We had 50 experiencers who participated in the study. We had a 25-person control group. We wanted to know if the commonalities among experiencers were common among the general population. So that was the reason for this control group. What we found is that of 45 questions we asked, there were 23 commonalities among abduction experiencers. And I probably shouldn't use the word abduction. It's not really politically correct anymore. I tend to use it because my Aunt Betty and Barney Hill were the first abductees whose case became public in the United States. That was the result of a violation of confidentiality. But getting back to the commonality study that I will mention briefly on Saturday when I lecture, and my co-author, Denise Stoner, will probably mention in greater detail, we found some very surprising commonalities. For example, we looked at the possibility of paranormal activity in the homes of experiencers. And we found that 88% of the experiencers were reporting certain types of paranormal activity in their homes, such as light orbs, such as articles that would simply fly off the shelves when immediately within a few days or after an abduction experience. We found that experiencers tend to become more psychic or intuitive after an experience. We had some very, very interesting findings. And one thing that we wanted to know, particularly from my perspective, coming from a scientific background, I wanted to know if experiencers had had a close encounter before the experience. I wanted to know if there were witnesses. We found that the majority had at least one close encounter, one period of missing time, and many, a very large percentage, also had witnesses to a UFO near their home, and generally in close proximity to that home. So that was very interesting. We've spoken about that at length in our book, The Alien Abduction Files. And I mentioned Denise Stoner. Her abduction with her husband and her daughter were, that was a case that I studied, that I investigated, and wrote about in the Alien Abduction Files. Denise will be speaking about this experience and about what she had later decided was a lifetime of abductions. When she was a little kid, she always thought of someone called the Oil Can Man. She thought of nursery rhyme characters coming out of her walls. We later found out that her father and mother had a very unusual experience and missing time in her childhood home. And you've probably heard that experiencers are often generational experiencers. The mother or grandmother is taken, then the parents, then the children, then the grandchildren. And this appears that it could be the case in Denise's family, as it is in many other families as well. We're going to have some very prominent, well-known experiencers at the conference this weekend at the Clarion Hotel, the Experiencers Speak 3 conference. And for example, Linda Corteil, famous from Bud Hopkins' book, Witnessed, is going to be there speaking about her experience. Jim Weiner, who is one of the Allagash Four, does a wonderful presentation on his abduction experience with 3 other men. So
Here in Maine.
Here in Maine, in the Allagash, a lot of evidence. All of these prominent cases have a lot of evidence.
Well, with a lifetime of experiences myself, being a twin sister, my sister Debbie, we've been doing a lot of talking to many experiencers after starting the group Starborn Support in 2006. And, you know, most people that don't believe have not done 1 ounce of research. And, you know, when people come up to you and say, you know, oh, that can't possibly be true, usually, you know, it's because of them themselves being told that for various reasons, whether it be religion or being brought up by people that just have closed minds. So the individual has to at least do some research. The numbers eventually of experiencers will speak very loudly, and there seems to be a lot of experiencers coming forward now. We started the organization to give the experiencers a place to go and give them an ear so that we can listen to them. We've got experiencers that call us from all over the world, and sometimes they'll call us once, and just to be able to tell somebody that will listen, and that's all they need. And then there's others that we work with for years, and you know, we have various assistance for them, the main one being the Starborn support groups, where individuals that are going through these experiences can gather together, share experiences, and really form what seems to be lifelong relationships and friendships. It's amazing to see the experiencer community. They come from all walks of life, and if it wasn't for the abduction phenomenon, we probably would never even, you know, cross paths in our lives. And it's great to put aside all differences and just with this one huge thing and this commonality that we all share, it opens up that bond that we have and a connection to one another.
Now you started this conference 3 years ago. This
Yes.
is the 3rd one. Can you tell us something about the conference? You were talking earlier about, you know, who's going to be there, and is there anybody you're really looking forward to hearing from this year?
Oh yes, there's quite a few. I mean, obviously, you know, I know many of these people, but some I've just talked to on the phone. So the face-to-face and getting to know everyone is great. But this year, Ray Hernandez, he's starting a wonderful organization that's going to focus on everything, from, you know, the experiencer to the UFOs to near-death experience and things like that, and trying to figure out how everything ties in. And he's going to give a presentation all about that. He just launched the website, but Kathy is actually going to be involved with that as well. So pulling people from all over that that can help with this is going to be great, and it's going to be a unity. You know, there's so many fields that, for example, ghost hunting teams, they all seem to be competitive, and there's so much drama, and you know, there's no unity there. So to unite everybody with their own expertise in areas and to bring it all together, hopefully we can, you know, put our heads together and get some answers, as well as scientific research that can help prove that this is a very real phenomenon that affects millions of people. There's a lot of experiencers. As with any other kind of traumas and things that happen to an individual, they can look for self-medication. You know, a lot of, you know, alcohol and stuff just to numb that. You know, there's no place for them to turn right now. So to have the counselors and the staff and everyone on that same page and educated and to be able to, you know, discuss amongst themselves with board meetings and medical, you know, analysis, and just to try to figure this out, but to have a place where they can go if they're injured by an ET from, you know, whatever may have happened to them, or from another related phenomenon, just to have a place to go and say, this is what happened to me and this is who did it, instead of being scared. So we're hoping to be able to give them an alternative to come somewhere where people will listen.
I have a question. Dr. Jacobs, David Jacobs, talked about different phases that seem to be going on, like the first set of experiences, Betty and Barney Hill, your aunt and uncle. There's a certain sort of agenda that seems to be a commonality between different abductees, and then it changes like throughout the 80s, 90s, things sort of shift. So what's in what their agenda is and what people report when they come back. So I wanted to ask what the most current set of commonalities seem to be. I am going to buy your book so I can find out. But just as like a teaser, if you could tell me.
In terms of the on-board experience, is that your question? What is happening on
Yeah,
board
it seems like
now?
a lot of experiencers are shown different things.
Yes, that has been going on for quite a long time, where experiencers are shown scenes either in their heads, either through holographic images, or actually on screens on walls in the examining room, and sometimes on very large screens in what appear to be classrooms of a sort. Images of destruction, destruction on Earth, waves, the ocean sweeping over the Earth, volcanoes, very destructive scenes, and many experiencers believe that they're being shown the future of Earth. I'm not certain about that. If that is all that it's about, I know that the ETs are very, very interested in human emotions. They're studying our emotions. They're very concerned, from the feedback that I've received from hundreds of experiencers at this point, about our destructive behavior. In the 20th century alone, we killed 200 million of our own kind. Imagine what we would think if we were studying life on a planet and we saw the population of that planet being that destructive. They seem to be creating scenes that will evoke human emotion. At the same time, and it's not just destructive scenes, there might be positive scenes. People might be shown images of their deceased relatives, even their deceased pets, and a strong positive emotion is evoked through them. And the ETs seem to be very, very interested in this human emotion. Why is that? We know that there are reproductive experiments going on. We know that they are very interested in our genetic makeup, and that they have certain desired characteristics that they, we believe, are attempting to create in humans. That perhaps all of this is part of an experiment to see how successful they have been in changing very, very slowly these generational groups across a population, sort of a longitudinal study.
Remember that we may be dealing with many different groups coming here for many different reasons. Think of the leaders in Central America after Columbus. You got your Dutch, your Spanish, your French, your English, your Portuguese. Some here to steal from the gold, some to convert the natives, some to bring back tomatoes and potatoes. You know, all kinds of reasons.
And they all have different ways of managing, from like a heavy-handed approach to a very non-interventionalist sort of approach.
Another reason that I have found through my telepathic communications is a lot of these beings are telepathic, not only to read our thoughts, but they're empathic to feel our feelings. And the feelings that they get from humans aren't good feelings. Anger, hate, jealousy, fear, these are not good feelings. and they literally will hurt these beings. And as we project these feelings onto them, it ricochets off of them and it hits us back. So this is a communication that will not work. They have to be able to, they're studying our emotions. And I think they've gathered a group of people to try to get them to be of a more love, a higher vibration of love. Something happens to planet Earth, it's going to have a domino effect throughout the universe. We are, as a human race, destroying ecosystems on our own planet every day. Now, for example, the honeybee is on decline. Now, people don't understand how valuable that insect is, but it's estimated that life on Earth could end in a matter of years if the bees were gone. So every little being, whether it be microscopic or the largest of whales, has a purpose here on this planet. To interfere with any of the ecosystems is obviously going to have a domino effect here as well. So the same is with the planet and the solar system and the universe. Earth is a living, breathing entity, and mankind has sucked her blood out, taken her bones, cutting her hair, and just destroying it. And that's how I feel that they're not going to let that happen. And that's another message that they relay to experiencers, that this is a very precious resource here, and our planet Earth, even if there is more planets like Earth, they're either very far away from each other or just very few. So it's so important here because of the vast array of life. I mean, it's an amazing place, and mankind is just not even thinking about tomorrow. They live in the now and take without putting back. And most of mankind has lost that connection with planet Earth, and to bring that back is very important. Everything we need to survive is here and given to us, and it's not about who controls or who has the most here. It's there's enough for everyone, and it can be brought back to that coexistence with us and everything else that lives here. We're not the only life that needs this planet. We're just one that live here.
I was wondering well, a lot of people, when they have experiences, it tends to happen when they're either in a dream state or in between waking and sleeping, or maybe watching TV when they're in some sort of a trance state. And I was wondering what your impression of the connection between altered states of consciousness and abduction experiences are, and if there's a way, if you're aware of this as like sort of the mental state that people happen to be in when they're abducted, if they're aware of that, can they stop an abduction experience?
What gives you the impression that most abductions happen when people are in an altered mental state?
Well, it just seems, I'm not saying most, but it seems like
Many? Kathy, what have you found?
I found that about 60% of experiencers have had at least one close encounter while they were in an external environment. There might have been witnesses. They might have conscious, continuous recall of observing non-humans. After that, and sometimes even before that event, they are visited in their homes generally, and they continue to have these experiences. But it's not as verifiable, obviously, when they're in their homes. Now, you've probably all heard on television over and over again that this is all the result of sleep paralysis, and certainly the impression is given that all of this is happening in people's bedrooms when they're sleeping. That's simply not true. And it's very easy to tell the difference between sleep paralysis and a real abduction or contact experience. Because in sleep paralysis, well, first of all, you're sleeping. Many experiencers are afraid to go to sleep at night. They know that they might be taken. And they think that if they're awake, then it's not going to happen. Well, actually what happens is then they remember the beginning of the experience and have recall of observing the non-human. But when we're talking about sleep paralysis, there are certain symptoms of this. You might have auditory hallucinations. You might have visual hallucinations. If it's sleep paralysis alone, then you'll see a shadowy figure. This is a period of time where you are between sleeping, between REM sleep and waking. And so you are paralyzed at that point. The only thing you can move in sleep paralysis is your eyes. Now, that doesn't happen to many experiencers. A lot of times, experiencers are wide awake.
Driving a car, for example.
Well, the reason with driving a car is a lot of times people who experience abduction have experiences when they're on long drives, right? And when you're driving a car, you sort of enter this trance state where it's like you're physically here, but your mind is sort of, and I'm not saying that these experiences aren't real. My question is being in that sort of meditative state,
I think
a conduit
it might
maybe.
be, when they grab you at this point, is when you're in a meditative state or, you know, just about to fall asleep, you don't have the fear, the hate, the anger, and all this stuff, and they can hit you and get you all, you know, stable, and that might be a defense mechanism for them, so we can't hurt them with our emotions.
Many people, I think, who are in an altered state of consciousness might also have contact with a different level of being. Perhaps it would be perhaps something interdimensional, something that you have contact with at a different level than the physical level, like happens with a group of experiencers that I specialize in. Let me state that. So there are different things that go on, a number of different explanations and different states of consciousness and being that have to be studied. It's not all one thing.
Right. Yeah, and there's so many different races that not all of them, you know, need to come in and do hands-on. I think, you know, the hands-on stuff is probably when they need, you know, the physical materials such as, you know, DNA and other things that they're working with. As we were talking before, that telepathy isn't just, you know, talking in your mind. You know, they can show you images, they can, you know, you can obviously hear voices, but they can communicate with various methods. So I think it depends on, first of all, what race is contacting you and what their purpose of that contact is.
One of their methods of communicating is by giving experiencers downloads of information. And these downloads come very, very rapidly. It's not the way that we communicate with one another. And some experiencers report that they receive these downloads when they're in their homes. And if you really think about it, it's a lot easier to communicate with an experiencer if that is all you need to do than to take that experiencer through a solid surface onto a craft where that craft might be detected or seen.
Experiencers Speak is a great place for us to bond with each other. We're a soul family, a soul tribe, and it's an amazing thing. And as we get together and communicate more, we start to put together this puzzle, and it's just amazing to be part of. And you know, there's different people and organizations that will be led to one another, you know, for various reasons, but it all seems to be the ETs are directing us to one another and showing us the same things, or you know, somehow we all get led to each other, and it's It's an amazing thing. But Saturday and Sunday, the doors will open at 8:30. It's located at 1230 Congress Street, yes, 8:30 a.m. It will go all day. We have breaks in between and a lunch break.
The Clarion is
Yes,
the place.
the Clarion Hotel. We do have a website that you can purchase tickets using a credit card, and that's www.experiencerspeak.yolasite.com. You can also call me directly at 774-766-2558. So you can call ahead and reserve and just leave me your name and how many tickets, and I will have you on a list for when you come into the Clarion.
Can you walk in to the door
Yes.
and purchase a ticket?
Yes. Experiencer Speak is a great way to come and get educated and learn about something. You know, if, like the people I said, you know, you're not educated, do some research. Experiencer Speak is the perfect place to start for all the people.
We have
in
the
Maine.
best.
Yeah,
And it's not just open to experiencers,
no, it's
right?
open to everyone.
To
Yeah.
people want to know more about
Yes.
ufology as well.
Yeah, it's about education.
Excellent. So last call, does anybody else have any questions for
Anyone?
Nathan?
I have a question.
Okay.
Another
ahead.
question, sorry. So we've been kind of talking about the spiritual implications or the sort of the ethical place they're trying to lead us to through these pictures and images and whatnot. I wanted to ask Dan about the technological side of it because there's been a lot of there's been a lot of talk about the reverse engineering of craft that have led to massive breakthroughs in our own technology. This is speculation, I know, but I think it deserves at least to be talked about, like IC chips, fiber optic cables, and all this stuff.
Just the jump since Roswell,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I
is
think
noticeable.
we need to recognize that an important part of the development, whether it's reverse engineering or developing new technology, has to do with government security.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot, well, the Washington Post a year ago had an article that said the military intelligence black budget of the United States for this past year was $52.6 billion.
That you know of.
But then,
Yeah.
That doesn't
the
exist.
three leading groups were the NSA, the CIA, and the NRO, National Reconnaissance Office. That's one heck of a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's not 6 professors and 20 grad students, in other words. The best detection equipment belongs to the government, whether it's radar, satellites, et cetera, gun cameras, all of that. We don't see that data. So when it comes to technology, I'm not fully convinced that we've learned a lot from the craft. If you've given Christopher Columbus a nuclear submarine and say, hey Chris, great job discovering new continents and stuff, we've got a ton of money, we need 2 more of these nuclear subs. Could he have built one? Not a chance. If you gave the smartest people on the planet in 1934 a cheap wristwatch, digital wristwatch, could they have built another one? Not a chance. A chip facility costs $1 billion. You know? So we've got to be real careful in jumping to the conclusion if something new has been brought forth, oh, it's from reverse engineering, Roswell or Aztec or any of these other crashes. I think we've learned things. In my book, there's a picture of me with my hand on Flying Saucers and Science, my hand on the Apollo 12 command module. And you know, it's a round, blunt body. Looks far more like a flying saucer than a high-performance aircraft. I used to think a high-performance aircraft had a pointy nose, sharp wings, highly streamlined, you know, like the X-15. And here we have something that comes in at 25,000 miles an hour, and it's a big, round, blunt body. Well, it turns out that wind tunnel tests were done on round, blunt bodies in 1947. So the idea, these guys are going fast, maybe we can figure out how that works, may very well have come from studying what we can observe. That doesn't mean we back engineer what they're doing. Well, I'll give you another strange example. You send out pieces of the wreckage from Roswell to the best labs with the high security clearances and smart people. 2 important things. And you say, what is this stuff? And the guy says, it's a combination of samarium and cobalt. Why would anybody put those 2 things together? Not your problem. Send it out to other people measure the electric, magnetic, etc., thermal properties of this stuff. Guy comes back and says, you know, I don't know where you got this. He doesn't have a need to know. But it's got the highest magnetic moment of any material I've ever measured, make a great permanent magnet. Well, it turns out that's what wound up in ghetto blaster magnets, was samarium and cobalt. I was doing a science commentary on the radio about new and better permanent magnets, neodymium iron boron. I'm not making this up, this is what they call them. And in the back of the article it says the original work on samarium cobalt was done at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Wright Air Development Center, and I just broke out laughing. I bet I know where that idea is. So it's an idea that doesn't mean you know how to build another flying saucer, but you've learned something. And just one more example of this, in 1970, I had a literature search done of the government report literature using one keyword, magnetoaerodynamics, long word. Much to my surprise, I got 900 references, of which 90% were classified in 1970. Somebody was doing a heck of a lot of work on electromagnetic fields, air plasmas, stuff like that. And so who knows what all has come out of that. And it may be because we made measurements on craft coming into the atmosphere that changed direction, the color changed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we can learn, in other words, from observations of actions, not just from pieces of stuff. And so there's a difference between saying you learned a lot of new technology by studying the saucer data and saying you back engineer, now I can build my own.
Yeah.
That's another story.
That's like giving a squirrel a cell phone. It's just,
You would have trouble, yes.
Yeah.